All right, we're going to begin this extraordinary meeting, and we're here on Senate Bill 222. Since our last meeting, much has happened as far as ongoing negotiations, discussions, review, having various groups who have interest in this be involved, and I want to really thank all those parties who have taken the time, the effort to work on this. This is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation, frankly, I think we're going to get put through this year. And I want to, first of all, take special acknowledgement of the great work that Andy Welch has done, because I turned it over to him to really be the head honcho in trying to work through this process. We had some fixed ideas of the way things we wanted to turn out. We've listened to everybody. There have been positions we all took agreed modification to where we were, and I think we really have worked through a great piece of legislation. Is it perfect? No, I don't think it's going to be perfect. Few things we say come out of the legislature in a perfect condition anyway, but we've got time if we need to come back next year and still make modifications to it. This bill will not become effective until January 1, 2019, but I think it's important we get the bill in place so all parties, local governments, state interest groups have a right to know what we're looking at doing as this progresses. We're dealing with the bill, which is LC 288511S in your folder, and you also have what is a proposed amendment, AM 281598. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Welch and let him present the bill with its amendments. Mr. Welch.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendments you have before you that's for your consideration is AM 281598, and I want to thank members of the committee because almost everyone in the committee I've spoken with about this bill, and they have contributed in various ways in terms of amendments or concepts. The bill, structurally, with the amendment, is still going to create an authority. It will be an autonomous, independent authority. It is not funded by state funds. It is funded entirely by the revenues derived from the E911 charge that is currently on the books, plus the modification here to create parity among all the 911 charges. And that parity increase is going from 75 cents on prepaid wireless or the burner phone type charge, that sales tax charge, from 75 cents to $1.50. That is consistent with all the other 911 charges that are currently levied under the Emergency 911 Telephone Act. The amendments you'll see go through, and the first set of amendments, lines 1 through 6, they modify some of the responsibilities of the authority to ensure that there will be some contemplation of a statewide public safety communications network, also looking at consolidation and interoperability of 911 systems, and then finally an additional requirement that the authority collect data and statistics regarding the performance of public safety answering points. That way there'll be some ability to review and consider the performance of those 911 facilities throughout the state. With respect to the structure of the authority, the next set of amendments on AM 281598, lines 7 through 80, outlines all the people that will now serve on the authority if this bill becomes law. And you'll see here that we have, through this allotment, we have members of both the legislative branch, the executive branch, and then the predominant membership is that of local officials, either elected or 911 officials or first responders, that will make up this committee, or this authority, the board of the authority. And those are all outlined throughout those lines there. I won't go through each of them. You can look through them and see them fairly quickly. In addition to that, on lines 81 through 106, this gets into a redirection in terms of who will collect the revenues, the 911 fees, and both the telecoms, and it was the feeling of members of this committee that it needed to be consolidated and centralized in one location, a state agency that had the security and capabilities of collection of the money and also disbursement of the money, and that will be in the Department of Revenue. So it's now required that that be in the Department of Revenue. It specifies that these charges and those that are collected are local fees. These are local charges that are levied by the local governments. DOR is simply serving as a conduit for the collection and disbursement so that telecoms can send the checks plus their reports on a monthly basis to DOR for dissemination out to or disbursement out to the PSAPs, and there's about 172 PSAPs, I believe.
Yeah, under that line 97. Get that read out.
Okay, yes, sir. Line 97, you'll see that the language there says, under no circumstances shall such charges be or be deemed to be revenues of the state, and such charges shall not be subject to or available for appropriations by the state for any purpose. And that is referring to the revenues that are coming in from the 911 charges. Now, understand that the bill does allocate a 1% off the gross revenues. Up to 1% can be allocated to the Department of Revenue to cover their administrative costs, and 1% of the revenues, gross revenues, will go to the authority itself for the purposes that we went over before. But one of the centralized purposes is for auditing, and this is to audit the telecoms to ensure that they are receiving the proper amount of money from their regions and from their constituents who have telephones or wireless devices. So that was that amendment. The other amendment you'll see at line 107 creates a new code section, and this is one that instructs the parties, the authority, and the telecom service suppliers to work together with the state in developing and implementing a statewide public safety communications network. Several of the members of this committee also serve on the Public Safety Subcommittee on Appropriations, and I know that and on Public Safety as well, and you're aware that we are working towards a statewide communications plan so that our state officials can speak with local and all of our state law enforcement, first responders, and emergency network can be built in that regard. This just puts that in one authority to look at that. And now with all these state officials, both state and local officials coming together under one authority and housed in one authority, that will provide, I think, an excellent opportunity for them to discuss the issues and debate that and make recommendations back to the General Assembly. On sections, the next section is lines 110 through 114. You'll see that this is the 1% amount of the charges that will be going to the Department of Revenue. You'll also see on lines, there are some changes in language just to redirect from the authority to the Department of Revenue at 115, 116. And then also at lines 117 through 123, some more language changes. But here you'll see that the Department of Revenue shall provide the authority with access to the department's records. Now, it is subject to the confidentiality requirements. And I will note here at this point at line 123, the industry has requested that we add language here after the word authority and before the word period, the following language: or others retained by the authority. And this is just to deal with contractors that the authority may hire as auditors to look at the information and maintain it as confidential. So at an appropriate time, I want to add that language to the amendment. The other parts of this is cleanup information at lines 124 through 128. And then at lines 129 through 143, this is language to deal with and to mitigate against service delivery problems that exist in the state, and to create a level of fairness in making sure that the 911 caller that calls in for emergency first responders gets that first responder to his or her residence or wherever they're in need in an efficient and expedited basis, and not with duplication and without double taxation to city citizens. The last lines 144 through 151, this language should be deleted. We have taken care of that in the previous version, and ACCG has asked for me to ask you all to delete those lines from this amendment. The final lines are at 152 through 154. Those will address the cleanup language in the last few paragraphs there. And those are all the amendments, Mr. Chairman, that we are proposing to Senate Bill 222.
Great. Any questions from members of the committee of Mr. Welch? Yes, ma'am. I'm get you identified. If we don't have a floor mic, let's see. Here we go. You're going to be 47. 47. Excuse me. Got you. You're on.
The administrative fee for revenue shall be 1%, not up to 1%.
Yeah. It's up to.
It's up to 1%.
It's up to what we recognize here, Ms. Oliver. Let me get the language because it's important that we talk about this. And this was something we had negotiated with Department of Revenue. It is based upon actual and the terms. Look at line 103, 104. So the Department of Revenue shall receive payment for the actual and reasonable cost of services not to exceed 1%. So what you'd have is a contract which by their budgeting would say, here's what we're due up to that amount. That is, yeah, that's the amount going to the authority itself, I believe, yeah.
Shall retain from the charges, so they get to keep it and then they have to give it back.
That they, let's see.
Yeah, that goes to the authority. That's the authority's amount to cover the administration of the chapter. I mean, that's what it says right there at line
Yeah.
113, 114.
The-
Yes, ma'am,
Yeah,
because
that's-
there's 2 percentage points that are being, 1 percentage point is retained by the Department of Revenue to be sent to the authority for its administration. The other one is the one that the chairman was speaking about, and that's the not to exceed 1% for a service charge in the collection and disbursement of money.
Tell me how we're dealing with prepaid cards, I don't understand it.
No, the prepaid wireless is currently now is at a 75-cent charge, and so in the SB 222, the increase is to go from 75 cents to $1.50, is to double the amount.
Click where?
Those fees are not. There's no change. We're increasing that 911 charge, and as you'd heard from testimony before, the from ACCG, from telecoms, you're seeing a shift into the prepaid wireless marketplace, and it's the only actual 911 charge that is done at a rate that's under 150, at least set statutorily that way. So this would actually create parity among them and not create an unfair advantage for those that may want to, to avoid those charges.
Any further from you, Ms. Oliver? Anyone else have questions? What I suggest I'd like to do at this time as chair, I'm going to open it up for comments of those in the public who have been involved with this. If you'd like to, I see back in the back the representative of the local governments, Mr. Ramsey, Ms. Nesbitt. Are you here? I'm here. There you are. And if you'd like to come make comment or statement about the status of the bill at this time.
Mr. Chairman, we support the version that you. We thank the committee for working with us to hammer out this compromise, and we fully support the bill that's in front of you today.
Well, that's nice to hear. Kevin Curtin, I think you represent most of the telecom folks. Do you have anything you'd like to state to the committee about the status of the present bill with amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just same as Deborah, we support the compromise that's been reached here on this bill, and thank Representative Welch and yourself for all your hard work on it.
Now, you heard what was said about the confidentiality. Is that sufficient to cover what you feel is a concern that the telecommunication group would have about their records and information?
Yes, sir. With Representative Welch's proposed language to add a few words to the end of that one line, we feel comfortable.
All
Yes, sir.
right.
Thank you.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. Anyone else desires to come up? Mr. Rushi? Patel, excuse me.
Real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Representative Welch, and we're on board with this version as well, and just want to thank you for all your hard work.
Great. Anyone else? If not, we'll close off further comment. The bill is now in the breast of the committee with the amendments, and we have a motion do pass. It's been seconded, and we do have, it's on LC 288551S, and we do have the amendments. Mr. Welch, I'll let you speak to putting the amendment in. We'll have it, we'll take the amendment as a full body with sections that need to be altered that you will so state.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I propose that, or move that we amend Senate Bill 222 as passed by the Senate with the proposed amendment AM 281598.
Do you have amendments to the amendment?
Yes, sir. That's, and then, do you want to get a second?
Read those out. Is there a second on that? Seconded.
All right, then, Mr. Chairman, I also have amendments to the amendment. Those amendments will begin with a insertion of language at line 1, 2, 3 of the amendment. After the word authority and before the period, insert the language or others retained by the authority.
Do we have any objection to that amendment to the amendment? There's no objection, the chair accepts it.
And then on page 5 of the amendment, delete lines 144 through 151.
If there's no objection to the amendment, the chair will accept that amendment.
And then, Mr. Chairman, unless I see an objection from ACCG on this one, I did want to, with regard to the effective date, Section 11A of the bill, as it's written, would not become effective until January 1st of 2019. I'd like to move that up to the effective date of July 1st, 2018. And there's an amendment that I have to do that.
All right.
Is there?
Do y'all have issues?
We had made
From the podium, yeah.
We had made a commitment to some attorneys with litigation ongoing with telecoms, that would be the appropriate date, and I really want to stick with that commitment.
January 1 date?
The January 1 date, 2019, because they are currently engaged in this litigation about fees, and this doesn't take effect until then. And so we had made a commitment to them to keep it at that date.
Would you would you just look with me at section 11A of the amendment? I don't think that language impacts any of the telecoms.
Well, here's what you have. Let me stop for a second and look at the bill. It says the act shall become effective July 1, 2017 for the purpose of creating the local government authority and appointing members, et cetera. And you might want to just have that added in as a part of this, that Section 11A will also become effective as of July 1, 2017. This is under Section 14 of the bill.
Yes, sir.
That might be an appropriate place to do that, and then leave the effective date for the other portion of the services being the January 1, 2019.
Okay. All right. Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yes, sir, it does.
Let's do that. Make that a proposal.
And then the
Under
last
Section 14.
The last amendment would be to amend Section 14 of the underlying bill to be included in the current amendment. After the word, on line 683, after the word thereof and before the semicolon, insert the language "and section 111" of the amendment. Sorry, section 111A. Not 111, I'm sorry, section 11A. So in your, well, in section 14 of the Senate bill, that would be amended, so that's line 684
684.
of your blue copy. You have your,
Hold on. Lost it now. All right.
so if you look at line 684, this is the effective, determines when the effective date of the bill, of the sections occur. So if you look at section 14 of the Senate bill, then the additional amendment would be that where it reads, "This act shall become effective on July 1st, 2017 for purposes of creating the local government 911 authority and appointing members thereof." And then I wanted to include,
Then you have after thereof, continue that phrase, comma, and enactment of section 11A.
yeah, enactment of section 11A.
Then a semicolon.
Yes, sir.
All right, is that clear? You propose that as amendment?
I do.
If there's no objection, Chair will accept that amendment. Is there anything further as far as amendments to your amendments?
No, sir.
Member sheet. Is there any questions of members of the committee? If not, the Chair will first on the adoption of the amendments as stated by Mr. Welch. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. That motion carries. We're back to the main question, which is a due pass of LC 288511 as amended as a committee substitute. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion opposed, motion carries. We have, thanks to our friends with the ACCG, there's lunch down in my office. If you'd like to go down and have a box lunch, and what else you got?
We need to find out who the house sponsor is.
We'll find that out, Mr. Kennedy. All right, thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Good job. Good job.
I just realized that thing wouldn't become effective until 19.
That's right. Good thing you remember that.
Chairman Welch. Chairman Welch, can you give